Chapter 1: The Fisherman Who Couldn't Fish.
In the small riverside village of Enchita, where the mighty Udin River was both the lifeblood and the legend of the people, there lived a man named Dumaka. Every sunrise, as the village stirred with the sound of pounding mortar and lively chatter, the fishermen would push their rickety boats into the river with hope and determination. Their nets, mended and blessed by the elders, would soon return heavy with fish, ensuring that every home had food for the day. But Dumaka was different. For as long as anyone could remember, he had been cursed with misfortune on the water. While his neighbors hauled in baskets brimming with tilapia and catfish, Dumaka's nets remained empty. A constant reminder of his perpetual hunger and the derision of those around him. Each morning, as he trudged to the riverbank with his patched-up canoe and a heart full of determination, villagers would whisper, "There goes Dumaka. If the river refuses to feed him, perhaps the spirits are laughing at his despair." Even the elders, steeped in wisdom and ancient proverbs, shook their heads sympathetically when they saw him. Yet Dumaka's spirit, though battered by years of failure and ridicule, clung to a single, burning promise he made to himself one starless night: tomorrow would be different. He would return from the river with a catch that would prove his worth and silence the laughter echoing through Enchita. On a dewy morning, as a thin mist danced upon the surface of the Udin, Dumaka set out alone. His canoe, creaking under his weight, moved slowly along the winding channel. The water was still as glass, reflecting the blush of dawn and the silent prayers of the villagers. Dumaka's thoughts wandered as he recalled the taunts of his peers and the constant hunger that gnawed at his belly. "I will not be the laughingstock any longer," he murmured to himself. "I will wrest a miracle from these waters." He reached his favorite spot, a narrow bend of the river where, according to village law, the fish congregated in abundance. With trembling hands, he cast his net into the cool water. Minutes ticked by in agonizing suspense. Every passing second was a reminder of his past failures. Yet, just as his hope began to dwindle, the net suddenly jerked violently. Dumaka's heart pounded with both fear and anticipation as he pulled back with all his might. In that moment, it seemed as if the entire river held its breath. When he finally hauled the net aboard, his eyes widened at the sight of the catch. Not a common fish, but a creature unlike any he had seen, a fish whose silvery scales shimmered in the early light and whose eyes glowed with a strange inner fire. Dumaka's hands trembled as he reached out, caught between the desire to triumph and the instinct to flee from something supernatural. The water around the creature seemed to dance with a life of its own. In a voice soft yet urgent, the fish spoke, "Please, kindly spare me from your hunger. Return me to the river, and you shall be rewarded far beyond what you imagine." Dumaka froze. A talking fish. For a long moment, he questioned his own senses. Was this a trick of his starving mind or the intervention of the river spirits? His stomach growled, reminding him of his own desperate hunger. "Reward?" he echoed in disbelief. "I have not eaten in days. What reward could you possibly offer?" The fish's eyes shimmered even more brightly as it repeated, "I can bestow upon you a gift that will transform your life. But trust me, release me back to the river, and fill your humble dwelling's single bucket with water as I instruct. Only then will you see wonders." Dumaka's mind raced. The rational part of him screamed that this was impossible. A delusion brought on by hunger and isolation. Yet, desperation can soften even the hardest disbelief. "I'll do as you say," he finally muttered, though his voice was thick with uncertainty. Clutching the mysterious fish, he turned the canoe back toward his village, his thoughts a whirlwind of hope and dread. The villagers of Enchita, already awakened by the sounds of the river, watched in muted astonishment as Dumaka's boat drifted slowly into the dock. Whispers spread like wildfire. Has Dumaka caught something at last? What miracle does he bring? Yet none dared approach him, remembering the many times his nets had come up empty. Inside his small, mud-brick hut, barely warmed by a flickering fire, Dumaka placed the fish on a rickety wooden table. The creature's eyes still glowed as if holding ancient secrets. He retrieved an old bucket from a corner and filled it with water from a rusty pot. As instructed by the creature's soft plea, Dumaka set the bucket down in the center of his humble dwelling. Outside, the wind sighed as though it carried the voices of forgotten ancestors. With a deep, anxious breath, Dumaka awaited whatever marvel was promised. In that heavy silence, the very air in the hut seemed to tremble with anticipation, and the first chapter of his life's transformation was about to be written by forces unseen.
Chapter 2: The Transformation and the Mermaid's Warning.
No sooner had Dumaka set the bucket in place than a low hum began to resonate throughout his cramped hut. The fish, still resting on the table, quivered as if stirred by an invisible current. The water in the bucket shimmered and then, with a sudden burst of silvery light, the creature began to change. Dumaka watched with his eyes wide with both awe and terror, as the fish's body elongated and softened, its scales melting away into flowing robes of water and light. In moments, before him stood not a fish but a woman of striking beauty. A mermaid whose hair cascaded like a waterfall of silver, and whose eyes, deep and mysterious, reflected the moonlit river. "Greetings, Dumaka," the mermaid spoke in a voice that was both gentle and commanding. "I am Muonu, the spirit guardian of the Udin. You have shown mercy by bringing me home instead of casting me aside like common fish. For that, I shall bestow upon you a gift that will change your destiny." Dumaka could hardly comprehend what he witnessed. The transformation was beyond his wildest dreams. His hunger and poverty, which had haunted him for so long, seemed suddenly trivial compared to this divine encounter. Yet a cautious part of him whispered that nothing in life was ever free. "What must I do to receive this gift?" he asked hesitantly. Muonu smiled, a smile both warm and laced with sorrow. "Watch closely," she instructed. With a graceful movement of her hand, she touched the water in the bucket. The liquid began to swirl, rising upward as though summoned by ancient magic. In moments, the small pool expanded, defying gravity until it filled the entire floor of his hut with a miniature floating river. A river alive with countless fish gliding through crystal-clear water. The sight was mesmerizing. Silver flashes of fish darted among shimmering currents, and the sound of gentle water lapping against unseen banks filled the room. "This river," she explained, "will sustain you as long as you honor its balance. Each day, catch only what you need to feed your body and soul, and never let greed overtake you. For the river gives life, but it also takes back what is given if abused." Dumaka, overwhelmed by the vision, could only nod in gratitude. The taste of imminent abundance was sweeter than any dream he had dared to harbor. He reached out and gently cupped a handful of the live fish, feeling their smooth scales against his skin. "I swear," he murmured, "I will take only what is needed and honor your gift." Before he could ask any further questions, Muonu's expression grew wistful. I must leave now, she said softly. Tonight is my wedding night, and I must return to the depths from whence I came. Remember my warning, Dumaka, the river gives and the river takes. Abide by this promise, for failure will invoke a curse more dire than hunger itself. With those final words, the mermaid stepped toward the open door of the hut. In a swirl of mist and moonlight, she vanished into the night, leaving Dumaka alone with the living river at his feet and a heart pounding with a mixture of joy, gratitude, and an unspoken fear of what might come should he ever forget her counsel. In the days that followed, word of Dumaka's miraculous catch spread throughout Enchita. Neighbors who once scoffed, now marveled at the fish that appeared as if by magic, and Dumaka's fortunes transformed almost overnight. His hut, once a crumbling shelter, became a place of wonder where the sacred river flowed gently over the floor, and every meal was a celebration of life renewed. Yet, even as prosperity and admiration filled his days, the mermaid's cautionary words echoed softly in his mind, a whisper beneath the roar of newfound abundance.
Chapter 3: The Rise of Wealth and the Seed of Greed.
As the weeks turned into months, Dumaka's life blossomed. The once poor fisherman became the most celebrated provider in Enchita. Each morning, he would rise before the sun and enter his magical hut, where the sacred river flowed gently over the earthen floor. With practiced ease, he would scoop handfuls of shimmering fish, enough to feed his family and share with his neighbors. The village, once divided by envy and sorrow, now thrived on the bounty that Dumaka provided. Soon, the local market overflowed with fresh fish, and Enchita's reputation as a prosperous riverside community spread to neighboring lands. Dumaka's transformation was not limited to material wealth. His confidence soared as he was no longer the object of ridicule but a man admired for his blessed catch. It was during one such bustling day at the market that he met Ifedima. A striking woman whose beauty was matched only by her ambition. Clad in fabrics as bright as the midday sun and adorned with beads of polished ivory, Ifedima had come to trade cloth and spices. When her eyes met Dumaka's, a spark ignited between them. In whispered conversations beneath the shade of mango trees, they dreamed together of a future filled with opulence and power. Ifedima's ambitions, however, were not born solely of love but of an insatiable hunger for wealth. Why settle for a humble life by the river when you could command riches beyond our wildest imaginings? She would say. Her words resonated with Dumaka, whose memories of hunger and humiliation had long been buried beneath the euphoria of his newfound fortune. Before long, they married in a celebration that filled the entire village with joy. Songs were sung, drums beat in time with the pulsing heart of the Udine, and the newlyweds were hailed as living miracles. As their union grew, so too did Dumaka's greed. The sacred river continued to flow, offering its bounty day after day, yet the taste of abundance turned into a desire for ever more. We must not only feed ourselves, Ifedima urged one evening as they sat by the glowing embers of a communal fire, but also trade our fish far and wide. Let our wealth grow until it eclipses even the grandest dreams of Enchita's elders. Her persuasive words, laced with visions of far-off lands and riches unimaginable, slowly undermined Dumaka's commitment to the mermaid's warning. The simple rule of taking only what was needed was quietly forgotten in favor of accumulating fortunes beyond measure. Soon, Dumaka established a thriving fish enterprise. With the sacred river as his secret, he hired fellow villagers to help him harvest the fish, packaging them in large quantities to be sold in markets beyond the village. traders from distant regions began to visit Enchita, eager to secure the miraculous catch. Dumaka's once humble hut was expanded into a grand compound, its floors lined with polished wood and walls decorated with carvings that celebrated the river's bounty. Every corner of his new estate radiated wealth, and he proudly boasted that his success was a divine gift, a blessing from the river itself. Yet, as the seasons passed, a seed of discontent began to grow in Dumaka's heart. The memory of Miondo's parting words, the solemn promise that the river gives and the river takes, lingered like a distant drumbeat. Still, his mind, clouded by ambition and the allure of power, silenced that inner warning. I have been blessed, he would say, and blessings must be multiplied. And so, the delicate balance that had once sustained him began to falter under the weight of greed. The elders of Enchita, who had watched Dumaka's rise with a mixture of awe and caution, started to murmur about the consequences of unbridled ambition. They recalled old stories of men who had taken too much from the river and, in the end, had been swallowed by its depths. But their voices were lost amid the clamor of celebration and prosperity. Dumaka, intoxicated by his success and the adulation of his peers, ignored these ominous warnings. In his eyes, the river was a boundless source of riches, a treasure that could be exploited without limit.
Chapter 4: The Temptation of Foreign Riches.
One fateful afternoon, as the sun blazed high over the verdant banks of the sacred river, a new presence arrived in Enchita. A sleek, foreign boat. Its hull gleaming with lacquered paint and strange emblems, pulled up to the riverbank. From it emerged a group of well-dressed men whose pale faces and curious manners set them apart from the villagers. Their language was a mix of broken local dialects and an accent that hinted at lands far beyond the familiar horizon. Rumors spread quickly that these men were traders from distant shores, men who had heard tales of the miraculous fish and the boundless wealth of Dumaka. The leader of the foreigners, a tall gentleman with an air of calculated charm, approached Dumaka with a proposal that sparkled with promise. "Good day, sir," he said in measured tones. "We have journeyed many days to see the wonder of your fish. Our people long for such marvels. Allow us to purchase your entire harvest and, in return, we offer you riches and an opportunity to travel to our lands, a world of unimaginable splendor." His words painted vivid images of palatial homes, opulent garments, and endless feasts. Dumaka's heart leapt at the prospect. Here was the chance to leave behind the limitations of his village and ascend to a life of eternal luxury. The deal, however, came with a chilling caveat. The foreign trader produced a small glass vial containing a dark, viscous liquid. "This," he explained, "is a catalyst that will seal our business. Pour a single droplet of this substance into the sacred river, and it will ensure that no other fish can ever rival your catch again. With the river's bounty extinguished for all but you, we will pay you sums that will make you the richest man in all the lands, and we will then take you to our world of opulence." The very idea sent a shiver down Dumaka's spine. He recalled, in a fleeting moment of clarity, the mermaid's grave warning, "The river gives and the river takes." Yet, the allure of transcending his past and attaining wealth beyond his wildest dreams proved irresistible. Ifedima, ever the ambitious partner, grasped his arm and whispered, "This is our destiny, Dumaka. Why settle for scraps when you can have an empire?" Her eyes shone with a mix of greed and determination. After a long, sleepless night spent in turmoil, Dumaka's resolve hardened. The promise of escaping the confines of Enchita and stepping into a world of unimaginable wealth overpowered the lingering echo of ancient caution. At the stroke of midnight, beneath a sky heavy with stars and silent omens, he crept down to the river's edge with the vial clutched tightly in his fist. The water, which had once flowed so kindly in his heart, now appeared dark and mysterious under the pale moonlight. With trembling fingers, Dumaka unscrewed the vial and, after a long moment of hesitation, allowed a single droplet of the ebony liquid to fall into the swirling current. In that instant, a chill ran through him as though the river itself recoiled from the act. He heard nothing more than the gentle lapping of water against the bank, but in his heart, he sensed that the balance had been forever disturbed.
Chapter 5: The Curse Unleashed and the Final Legacy.
It was not long after that fateful night that the consequences of Dumaka's greed began to manifest in terrifying ways. The morning after the vial's drop, the sacred river, once a shimmering ribbon of life, appeared as a dark, ominous force winding its way through the village. The water, heavy and still, seemed to hold its breath. In the quiet of dawn, as villagers gathered at the banks to lament the sudden disappearance of fish, a low, mournful sound echoed over the water. It was as though the river itself was weeping for the loss it had suffered. Dumaka, who had been eagerly preparing to finalize the deal with the foreign traders, was startled by the unfolding calamity. His compound, which had once been the symbol of his miraculous rise, now stood as a grim reminder of his transgression. In the days that followed, as the river's flow weakened and its once vibrant life was replaced by a spectral emptiness, the elders began to recount old prophecies. They spoke of a time when a man would take too much from the river and, in doing so, incur its wrath. The mermaid's warning. The delicate balance between giving and taking resounded through every whispered conversation. On a stormy evening, when dark clouds rolled over Enchita and the wind carried a sense of impending doom, Dumaka stood alone at the river's edge. His eyes, once alight with greed and ambition, now filled with dread as he watched the water churn unnaturally. It was then that a figure emerged from the swirling mist. A figure whose presence was as terrifying as it was tragic. Muonu, the guardian of the river, had returned. But her beauty was marred by sorrow and anger, her silver hair was tangled by the storm, and her eyes burned with an unearthly light. "You have broken the sacred pact," she intoned, her voice resonating with both grief and fury. "You were granted the gift of the river to sustain you, not to be exploited for boundless greed. Now, the river will reclaim what was taken." Dumaka's heart pounded as he realized the enormity of his error. He fell to his knees, pleading for mercy, his voice hoarse in the roar of the storm. "Great Spirit, forgive me. I only wish for wealth to lift me from poverty." But Muondu's gaze was unyielding. "Greed blinds even the most blessed," she said. With a graceful yet terrible gesture, she extended her hand toward the river. In that instant, the water surged with a vengeance, rising and swirling in a violent torrent. The sacred river that had once brought life to Enchita now became a force of retribution. The ground quaked as water gushed into Dumaka's compound, and in moments, the grand estate he had built was swallowed by the churning flood. Dumaka's cries were lost in the tumult as his body began to contort. His legs fused into powerful, scaled fins, his skin turned sleek and gray, and his voice transformed into a mournful wail that echoed like the cries of the doomed. The transformation was neither swift nor painless, it was a gradual, excruciating metamorphosis that bound him forever to the river he had so carelessly betrayed. As the water claimed him, Dumaka's final vision was of Ifedima standing on the shore, her face contorted not with love or remorse, but with a cold, calculating greed as she clutched the very jewels that had once symbolized their shared dreams of prosperity. In the aftermath, the foreign traders, whose promise of wealth had been the catalyst for this tragedy, vanished as silently as they had come. They left behind a village in mourning and a river that now ran as a solemn testament to the price of unbridled ambition. The people of Enchita, their hearts heavy with loss and regret, gathered to remember the man who had once turned their lives around, even if only for a time. They spoke of Dumaka's rise and his eventual downfall, warning their children that no matter how great the bounty, one must never forget the delicate balance between giving and taking. Today, the legend of Dumaka endures in hushed tones by the riverbank. Elders remind each new generation, remember the tale of the greedy fisherman who was blessed by the sacred river and then cursed by his own ambition. Honor the river, for it gives life, but it will always reclaim what is taken in excess. And so, the sacred river flows on, a timeless reminder that in nature and in life, every blessing carries its own price.
Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe to Ogologo Folktales for more interesting African stories.